Hello, welcome to my channel, another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg. I am in week 18 of my Read What You Own Platinum Challenge, where I have challenged myself to read 100 books that I already own before buying another book. This challenge will soon morph into the 500 book challenge. And what have I been reading? I started off with one of the greatest plays of the 20th century. This is a reread for me, of course. It is Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett. Now, I once worked with an actor who lived in Brooklyn, and he did stage acting in New York City in the environments. His quote was, "Waiting for Godot is the greatest effing play of the 20th century. I effing hate it." Yeah, okay, that was a pretty bad Brooklyn accent, but Waiting for Godot is a pivotal play of the 20th century. In this edition, Edward Albee says it changed the future of playwriting. I will leave him at his words and say that if a playwright says that's true, he probably believes it. It is the story of two tramps, Tramps, as in a homeless person. If this is on the Google autocorrect in the CC, you're going to see that word sort of blocked out because it's a naughty word according to the Google auto translate, but it's not. It's just homeless people, and they are experiencing the crisis of the 20th century, an existential crisis where they don't quite know how to exist anymore. And as the great opening says, nothing to be done. And they meet other characters and they talk about life and the absurdity of life and the impossibility to understand anything in life. And what can you do with your existence when you don't understand anything? It is a great effing play, as my old colleague from Brooklyn once said. Is it the greatest effing play of the 20th century? I don't know. But while he hated it, I effing love it. If you have not read it, go out and seek it. Seek it at the library. Buy it in the bookstore. Get it on Kindle. Read this play. If you can, try to find an adaptation. I have not found any good adaptations, at least on YouTube. Maybe you'll have to rent one somewhere. Great effing play. Next book I finished was an audiobook. I am just happening to hold up the paperback copy because I own a paperback copy of the audiobook as well. This is set in the Middle Ages. It starts off with a young man going to a monastery to be trained in education. And his name is Goldmund, and he meets the monk Narcissus. So that's why you get Narcissus and Goldmund by Hermon Hesse. And it is mostly the story of Goldmund. It starts out with him being just a young kid, about 17, maybe 18, maybe a little younger, and him going out to visit the village one night and sneaking out of the monastery, where you can see it on the cover. He meets girls. He likes girls. He likes girls more than he wants to be a monk. So eventually Narcissus kind of convinces Goldmund to leave the monastery. Or not convinces him to leave the monastery, but sort of knows that Goldmund will be leaving the monastery and seeking a life outside. And what Goldmund learns is how to be an artist. And I'm going to leave it at that. I am not going to say this is the best book by Hesse I have read. I have read Steppenwolf, and I have read Siddhartha, and I have read Damien. This falls a little bit below Steppenwolf and Siddhartha, and on par with Damien. I still need to read more by him. It is well worth seeking out. It is a very German novel, very pondering, very slow-paced, and very intellectual. But I liked it a lot. For March Mystery Madness, This was supposed to be my book about water. It was rinse, lather, repeat, and grit. This is supposed to be rinse. This is supposed to be the book set on water. The main character, McGee, owns a boat in Florida. But it just so happened in this book, he leaves his Florida setting and goes to someplace like Arizona in the desert. So not a whole lot of water, doesn't really fit the rinse bill. But it is a pretty good mystery. He is being hired by a woman who thinks her husband, or her older husband, has stolen her fortune because she inherited a fortune from her father. And he is supposed to find out what happened to it. But she dies as he's trying to hire him. And then he has to go figure out why she was murdered. Pretty decent mystery. This is the third of the McGee books. I have read the first. I skipped over the second because I don't have it. But it's not as good as the first. But I enjoyed reading this. I actually read half of this in my paperback and half on a digital that I got off the library because the print is so darn small in these old paperbacks. The next book I read was a totally unexpected book for me. I had read an article in the Washington Post about books that are no longer being taught in schools. And one of those was Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. And I have read that book before, at least once, maybe twice. I may have read it in high school, way back when. And I read it about 10 years ago as an adult. But I decided, let's go revisit this book and see why the schools don't like it. And the best I can come to understand is that the N-word is used a couple times in this book. Also, other references to a character's race are used. They use Negro and Black and maybe one other. It really depends on the character and who's speaking on how that word is used. Now, I know that word can be highly offensive to many people, but it is not a reason to exclude it from an itinerary class, because the story of George and Lenny is just a great story. It really depicts the Depression age very well. And George is an odd character with his devotion to Lenny. Why does George stay with Lenny and protect Lenny when, as he says many times in that book, my life would be so much better if I just deserted him or deserted you, depending on who he's speaking to. It is one of the greatest short novels in American literature. And it is a book that anyone should read if they have not read it, or go back and reread it because it's now controversial. And I like reading books that are controversial, even if the controversy really shouldn't be there, in my humble opinion. The last book I finished was an audiobook, Shadows on the Rock by Willa, Cather. This is an historical novel about Quebec in the 1600s. And it starts with an apothecary in his shop and his young daughter. And it describes their life in Canada, in Quebec. It is not a particularly moving book or a great book, but it has atmosphere. I got the feeling of being in Quebec in that time period. And the characterizations are very sound. And Willa Cather is a very solid writer. It just was not one of her best works, I think. I think that would probably go to the Song of the Lark, or maybe Death Comes for the Archbishop. Well, anyway, Song of the Lark was my 90th book from my 100 book challenge. That means I only have 10 more books to go to finish my 100 Platinum Challenge. And I will be doing a countdown of every book that I finish until I get to 100. Well, thank you for watching and keep on reading.